Hello and welcome to busyworksbeats.com. We bring back the Busyworks Beats podcast. Today we're going to talk about udio settling with UMG. So a lot of people are telling you guys the obvious, which is just that udio, which was an AI music generation platform, they settled with UMG because UMG, the big dog, wanted to defend the rights of the artist. In my opinion, I believe the complete opposite. Let me tell you guys my thesis on this. And we're going to use some game theory. So this will get a little geeky. So let's first talk about game theory before we get into this. But let me read the headline. It says, Universal Music settles udio lawsuit, strikes deal for licensed AI music platform. It says, in a landmark move late Wednesday, October 29th evening, UMG announced that it has settled its copyright infringement litigation against AI music platform udio. Then it goes on to say, according to the announcement, the companies will collaborate on an innovative new commercial music creation. Okay, they're collaborating. If this was an enemy, why would you collaborate with the enemy? Then it says consumption and streaming experience. Sounds like they're trying to create a competitor to Spotify. The new platform is set to launch in 2026. It says the statement added that in addition to the legal. Okay, so before we even get into the whole article, the main thing here is that if I had an enemy and I wanted to take out an enemy, why would I get the enemy stuff and start being the enemy if I wanted to take out the enemy? So that's my first red flag from UMG. It clearly shows that they're not there to destroy and protect artists' rights. They're there to figure out how to use it for themselves. And like I said before, my thesis is anybody who was with that whole fight suno, fight udio movement that YouTubers try to create, you're basically just strengthening the top of the food chain in the music industry. You're making Sony stronger, you're making Warner stronger, and you're making Universal stronger. And then you guys come back and complain and say the industry's gate kept. They're really creating a gate now because if you guys don't know, some of the plans, if you go to udio, for example, you can't even download your music. They're creating what's called a walled garden, which means now UMG is in control of the AI technology and the models and the weights and everything to where they can generate music. Here's the real story. The real story is udio and suno were giving power to the average independent producer and artist to where they didn't have to get record labels to sign them and they didn't have to do anything because they didn't need their musicians, their studio time, anything. So because they can't control the competitors, that's when they go after the competitive platform. The same thing they did with Spotify. If I can't control the flow of artists coming onto the stage, that's a competitor. So these three companies, Sony, Warner, Universal, they go out, they find the competitors, or they create the platform for the competition to build upon. So for example, when you hear about these deals with like DistroKid and all these distributors, it's because they want to be able to control who enters the stage. Because if you can't compete with them, at least create the stage and the platform for them to create through. That's what the record labels are behind. And when you guys are, and I'm talking to the people who are so against udio, suno, the whole class action thing you guys try to push, especially a lot of YouTubers, how are you saying Opify and evil Spotify, and then in the same thing saying, fight suno and udio when they were giving power to the independent people? You're ultimately just monopolizing the music industry so that Sony, Universal, and Warner are going to take control. And here's a game theory example of what I'm trying to say here. So just consider this two kingdoms, okay? You have the one big kingdom in the middle, and they have three other cities, okay? So you have one kingdom in the middle and three other kind of satellite cities. Now, the satellite cities weren't as well defended. They were a little bit, rebellious in certain ways and kind of falling for propaganda and all types of stuff. So the main area was this middle city here. And they had a defection happen to where basically rebels took over a city and they convinced everybody to fight against the big establishment, right? This is the UMG. UMG, you replace the word Laminium with the UMG, okay? And replace all these three things you guys see here with, Warner, Sony, and Universal. Okay, just consider these are three record labels, and this is the monopoly in the middle, basically where they all work together anyway. Now, this Metellus Pius camp, consider this udio in this case. So udio says instead of going, directly at, Universal, Warner, and Sony, they're going to try to take out these little cities on the periphery because they're not well defended. And so in this example of game theory, the center city has two options. They can go directly for the troops that are going for the weak city. If they do this, however, they they have to have speed, okay? Because if they get beat, then they lose their position in the middle city, and then they are basically behind the other companies. So the question from, I know this is getting a little convoluted. Let me draw it on the board here. Okay, so you have city in the middle. This is big old monopoly, aka mob industry, music industry, which I keep teaching you guys about, but you keep defending these guys as if they're your friends. Let me show you guys what the music industry does, for example. Just to give you an example, I did a 2-hour live stream teaching people music production and drum patterns, okay? Drum patterns. Now, Universal decides to claim my video. Now, I played the same clip in a different video and it didn't catch, but they targeted the 2-hour video. That was basically a free course. So if you hit see details, it says claimants, UMG on behalf of Universal Records. Now, when you guys hear this drum pattern, you're going to be like, are you serious? Like, I was just playing a drum beat just off the top of my head and they claim this. Look. A boom bap drum beat, you guys. A boom bap drum beat. They claimed this record or whatever is behind this, but the main culprit is Universal. I could tell you countless stories about how Universal is behind so many of these arduous YouTube claims. Okay, so when I see the mob putting their pressure down behind the scenes, you guys might not see that. You don't understand how much of a headache they are to the average creator. And as you guys saw in the video, it was just me doing a boom bap drum kit, and they tried to claim my entire video. Not that I'm upset about it. It's a typical day in the workforce, but the thing is, they're trying to take all the revenue from a 2-hour course that I did for free for you guys because I did a boom bap drum beat. Like, understand how evil that is. Okay, now it's automated, but I think it's kind of targeted because it didn't work on my other videos. So what? Anyway, so here you have the main city in the middle. You have their periphery sites. Let's just call these like half defected. So let's put it like half green, half red. Okay, so some are listening to the big guy, some aren't. So it's like half green, half red. Okay, so they aren't as strong is my point here. All right, so you have these 3 periphery sites. And then let's do one over here. Right here, and then here. So instead of calling these like the Roman names and everything, it gets a little confusing with the Roman names. So let's just call this Kingdom 1 and Kingdom, it technically is not another kingdom, but let's just say Kingdom 1, okay? And then we have this kind of defected city over here. These are rebels, okay? So who are the rebels in this example? Udio. So K2 in this case is udio. All right, so follow the grid here. Udio is this guy right here. And K1 is really an amalgamation of Sony, Warner, and Universal. Now, we can technically, I think one of the articles says the RIAA is what went after Udio on behalf of. Okay, so let's just call it the monopoly for what it is. Sony, Universal, and Warner, okay? The people that you claim you want independence from, claim you want sovereignty from, but you keep the industry. Anyway, let's continue this example. So this rebel group, their decision is they have 2 decisions. They can go over here and attack directly, which would be like catastrophic if they went against a big city with a lot of defense. It would be kind of stupid. Okay, or they can go this way and take the satellite cities that aren't as well defended. And their goal is, instead of going direct to the main guy, they're going to go and take the side cities. Okay, so this is, I'm using this as a metaphor as to what suno, or excuse me, not suno, udio is doing. They're going after the satellites. They're going after the independents. Independents don't own, okay, independent. They don't own the majority of the music industry revenue. So why would they go straight to the majors and try to copy the majors like other AI software does, which they literally take voice weights. I think it's at Weights GG. They literally take the voice of 50 Cent, the voice of Ariana Grande, the voice of, you know, and they kind of create platforms, not the Weights, but other platforms create platforms where you can go there, type in lyrics, and out comes a Drake song. That would be going directly to. Okay, but Udio is a little bit different. They may have trained off of, you know, this public available music, but they weren't spitting out, here's a Drake beat, here's a Rick Ross beat, here's a whatever type beat. Okay, you couldn't even type in the keywords of the names of the artists because they would block it. So that was already happening. But there are sites where like they're literally built by just vibe coders who found a couple weights and et cetera, and built sites where you can type in lyrics and out comes a Drake song. So Udio in this case said, instead of directly copying, they're going to go for the independents who just want to create in the likeness of. So it's not a direct copy. It's more of in the likeness of. Okay, so we'll just put likeness. You have likeness path, and then you have the direct copy path. Okay. So as you guys know, in one of the rules of war, one is like mimicking is a form of war. Okay. So we're not going to get into the whole depth about this. Okay, guys. But here's the scenario. Okay. Udio can go directly to and against the big dogs. They did not. They went the other way, which is to go after the independents. And as their platform grew and grew and grew alongside of other AI platforms, okay, like Suno, for example, and all these other platforms like 11 Labs, and you got even OpenAI starting to talk about music generation, because once you come out with a video generator as an AI service, you need audio to go with the visual. So of course, OpenAI was eventually going to get into audio generation or music generation because it goes with their actual software. So they went for this path, and they were successful. Okay, because if you think about before AI and after AI, the wave, my mentor was telling me about AI years ago. I wasn't paying any attention to it. It wasn't something I could comprehend, but only until we saw Suno, Udio, and OpenAI, and all these other AI companies like Claude or whatever you guys use, Quinn, and all the DeepSeek stuff. And then you saw the whole response to that. Then once the masses understood AI, that's when it really went really, really fast in terms of people adopting this technology. So essentially, Udio was taking these peripheral cities, okay, and they were turning against the big guys, the Universals, the Sonys, the Warners, because now you don't need to go through their systems to leverage AI systems to create your own influence. And what did Sony, Universal, and Warner do? They said, okay, this is becoming a threat. We're losing our peripheral cities. How do we stop these people? Okay, so in this case, they went directly. I'm just going to, use an analogy here. They stopped the enemy from growing too much because their decision wasn't to go against Udio here because they may have been too slow, okay? Which they were. They're always slow. They don't understand tech. The nature of AI and all this innovative stuff is to go against the establishment. And, when you go against the establishment, you're usually dealing with people who are scorned from the establishment. So they never want to work for the establishment. So they're always going to be behind in tech most of the time. So Sony, Universal, and Warner could have been slow to respond, but instead they waited and they sent their attack to the second city. So they may have lost city number 1 and potentially city number 2, but they stopped it here. This is where the settlement happened, metaphorically speaking. Okay, because in this scenario, if you're Sony, Universal, or Warner, you have to make a decision. Do you go after the initial campaign to take over the peripheral cities, or are you willing to lose a city, but for sure win here because you have more forces here, you have more influence here? And that's exactly what happened with Sony, Universal, and Warner. So that's using game theory to explain what I'm talking about here. So this, guys, is not for your benefit. This isn't for you. It's for the control of the monopoly, which I keep preaching to you guys because I want you to understand a lot of stuff that appears as a benefit to you is actually not a benefit to you. So let's keep reading this article here. It says the statement added, okay. The new license agreements for recorded music and publishing will provide further revenue opportunities. Yeah, right. For UMG artists and songwriters. Okay, here's my question. So let's say somebody is a user on this new platform they create. And let's say you can create in the likeness of Chris Brown, for example. Now, what happens if somebody doesn't use the word Chris Brown or Kalani or, who else is, I don't even know, SZA, whoever is on UMG, I don't even know. Let's say they don't use that keyword, but they say, I want a R&B smooth beat that has minor ninth chords. Okay, who are we going to credit and attribute this to? Are we going to attribute it to SZA, Kalani, Usher, or are we going to attribute it to music that came out in the 1950s because that's where the chords even were invented? Who are we going to attribute that to? And that's where that blurry line is very clear that this is not for the artist on UMG platform to benefit at all, because there's easy ways where they can say that, oh, this wasn't influenced by the artist. We're not going to attribute the artist. So what are they going to do? Create a pool of money that they're going to pay the artist? Probably not. Are they going to create some kind of attribution system to where if you use certain keywords or certain tags that it's attributed to certain artists? Like if you say, I want a Drake type beat and it creates a Drake type beat, then Drake gets the credit and his whole team? I doubt that's what's going to happen. What I think is going to happen is they're going to probably do a tag system and, create a deal with just like YouTube creates deals with us. They're going to create some kind of deal. And then on top of that deal, with the split with the artist, they're going to create that blurry ground, like I said, where it's like R&B. Who owns R&B? Who owns minor ninth chords? Nobody. But it's in the style of 3 different artists combined. So who do you credit? I don't think their system's going to be that elaborate. I really think it's just going to be this vague pool of money that's going to go straight to the record label. It says the news arrives just over a year after the RIAA, on behalf of all 3 major record labels, sued udio and Pierce Suno for mass infringement of copyright. And I've already had a video about how AI is trained and what it actually does. Okay, so it says UMG's new agreement with udio comes as Universal and the other majors continue pursuing copyright claims against Suno. It says the Financial Times reported earlier this month that labels were nearing licensing deals with AI. Okay, get to the point. Music business. I'm just playing. I like this website, but a lot of these paragraphs are not like informative. UMG said that udio's existing product will remain. Here's the key. UMG, the person who claims their stuff was so infringed and AI is evil and it's taking the likeness of our artist and the purity of art. Then it says UMG said that udio's existing product will remain, which means they're not destroying this thing they considered evil. Here's another conversation too, is you guys got to understand the nature of AI. So the nature of AI, the whole premise is called open source for the most part. Okay, so open source means anybody on the planet can use this technology and build stuff without crediting any particular developer, or I don't know the exact credit system, but the main thing is that anybody can use it without owing some bigger entity some cut. Okay, so basically it's free. When you hear open source, for the most part, they mean free. Okay, but here's what these companies are going after. So let's just say even the underlying, whoops, did I lose it? Connection restored. Let's do this again. All right, so let's say the underlying technology here is open source. Let's just say. Now what happens is people create forks, and I'm not a coder, so if I'm saying the wrong words, forgive me. What happens is people create a derivative of this open source stuff, and then they do what's called closed source, I think is the right word. I might be using the wrong word. But basically where it's proprietary to the company using that software. So they customize it for their company and don't let other people use it. This is why people have a big issue with open AI, because they're not allowing people to really build on their open source stuff in terms of like the main company. They do have some open source stuff, but it's not the main thing, from what I understand. So this becomes a closed source thing. And again, if I'm using the wrong word, correct me in the comments. So if I were, my main issue that I have with these companies targeting the companies that are closed source, okay, whether it's UMG or whoever, is because they don't understand there's an entire community still working off of this open source material. So eventually there's going to be another platform, okay, and another platform. And what they're doing with this closed source, chances are they're not going to handle it well. They're not going to manage it right. And it's just going to stunt the growth. Whereas, as you guys saw with DeepSeek and all these other companies, they're going to supersede these companies just by the nature of bureaucracy and all this yellow tape that, a lot of corporations have to deal with. They're going to stunt their own growth because they're going against the whole nature of this AI development stuff, which is to keep it open source. Once you close source, you're pretty much kind of shooting yourself in the foot for the most part. I know I'm generalizing, but you have to have people who are super innovative on your team. So here's what UMG is doing, thinking they're doing something. They're basically capping their own growth. Then you're going to have open source stuff from China. You're going to have open source stuff from everywhere start popping up. You guys think udio and Suno are the only AI music generators? There are a ton out there. Okay, and some are free. Okay, but Suno is different because Suno not only just generates audio, it has a really nice analysis system where you can upload your own music. It basically analyzes the music, gives it categories, and figures out how to reverse engineer it so that you can create something in that likeness. But they also have something called Suno Studio, which is a whole different beast. None of the platforms have anything like Suno Studio. So even though you have companies like 11 Labs, you have companies like OpenAI trying to get into audio, those are, corporations, but then you have people who are out there creating free software that can do the same exact thing. So I guess my point is, these record labels coming after one of these trees does not stop the forest from growing. So when I saw that news, I was like, oh, they're just trying to get control of something they don't understand. They're just trying to get a foot in the door because they got left behind. And that's exactly what's happening. And they're also going to be capping their own growth. By nature, they're going to get outperformed by somebody in this category, just because the nature of how these coders and developers think. They want to go against these institutions for the most part. So I know that was a lot to be said, but you guys got to understand, with this whole like fighting against Suno and Udio, there's a million potential people who can publish some software right now that will be the same type of software. So it's like, what's the point of going after platform or that platform? It's once it's open source, anybody can develop. But see, the average person doesn't know that. And so they try to manipulate the sheep, okay, to fight against some common enemy. And they don't even realize you're fighting against these platforms like Udio and Suno just for UMG to come in and partner with them. And at the end of the day, even if they give their artists some kind of equity or likeness deals or whatever, there's infinite blurry lines on how to attribute the artists for outputs. And even if they create a pool and like some kind of creator pool, you guys think they're really going to give up over 50% to the creators? Come on. So you're really just accelerating your competitor in this music industry. And that's what I've been trying to say. Now that we have, proof that these companies are not trying to extinguish AI, they're trying to use it basically to keep control. All right, so let's keep reading here. I won't make this video super long. It says UMG said that UDO's existing product will remain available to users during the transition period, with creations controlled within a walled garden and the surface amended in multiple ways, including fingerprinting. Now, why would you want fingerprinting if you were an AI system? It's because you want to go out and claim, as you guys see on this video, you want to have the same monopoly that you've had before, claiming bullcrap like this on people's videos, because you can't control user-generated content. So how do you do it? You feed them the bait, right? Think about what happened in 2020. How do you control a people? You feed them the free donuts at the CVS and you give them a thing. Now, I'm not going to say what the thing is, but you give them free this, or you threaten to take away their job so that they are forced to take a thing. And that thing is, what they wanted to force upon you. So now you're fingerprinted, essentially, but they can control the populace, is my point. Now they can control all the UGC content, because now the bait was, okay, here's music you guys can create for your TikTok videos or whatever platform they're going to scheme up. But because it's fingerprinted, the average person doesn't do this much deep diving. So they're going to go through and try to become the next TikToker star. And then boom, 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 copyright notice, copyright notice, copyright notice. UMG owns your entire channel now because you tried to use some music from their platform. And these guys are already tied into the content system used to identify stuff like this, which is being abused, because this is clearly free to use. A boom bap rhythm that was not even a reference to anybody. Like, bruh, how do you copy a boom bap rhythm? That's abuse of the system. Now, it's not YouTube's fault. It's simply these companies and monopolies that you guys don't know behind the scenes are, it's like this. I had a plugin. The plugin was called Hermes. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. All right, so here's a video by Av McCree, for example. He covered my plugin called Hermes. I want to thank him for that, because he didn't have to, and he was gracious enough. So Hermes, this is my plugin. It had all these dope sounds in it. You guys know, for hip hop, trap, lo-fi, and R&B. I saw a couple other pictures here. So we have multiple skins for it. Now, the actual, when I went to do copyright and trademarks, the company Hermes, okay, Hermes, the fashion brand, who has nothing to do with software, nothing to do with audio, nothing to do with anything. They started flexing their muscle because they're $1 billion conglomerate. And they said, if you continue to pursue your trademark, we're going to basically cease and desist is what we got for using the word Hermes, not Hermes with a little accent over the Hermes, which is a whole different being in the terms of mythology. Hermes Trismegistus. Okay. They claimed, that we were using their likeness and all this type of stuff for plugin in a whole different category. Okay, so if you guys don't understand how trademarks work, you have categories. I can't just say I own BusyWorks beats in the food and dining industry. That's a whole different industry than what I'm in. But see, these $1 billion conglomerates, they have lawyers that are just waiting to defend their trademark. And so because they have such a payroll, you can't really fight against it. You'd lose more money trying to fight for the trademark than you would even earn on the product. So that's where they start flexing their weight. And this is exactly what's happening with these big corporations. But the average person doesn't know that because they're not in the business world. So they don't see all this bullcrap these companies do behind the scenes. All right. So that's why, when I see all these features and it says including fingerprinting, filtering, and other measures before the launch of the updated service. First of all, udio is falling way behind Suno, like way behind Suno. It's night and day. Suno is so much better than udio that it's not even close. Now, another kind of key figure, and there's a lot to say. I might have to shorten this video for the sake of just time, but I knew A16Z was behind udio years ago. I might have even made a video about it. And A16Z does not lose in tech. When they put out tech, it's because they're going to win. And so these companies, sometimes companies build companies so that they can sell to the bigger conglomerates. Now, they knew this. They're going to war. Udio is going to war against the music industry. So when people say disrupt, they mean going to war. Okay. And this is the game theory example. Udio could have done the stupid thing, which is go directly at the record labels, or they can go for their weak spots, which is exactly what they did. And they forced them to settle and merge. So they did not destroy the enemy at all. What is that famous phrase? If you can't beat them, join them. Well, use this term. If you can't beat them, merge with them. Okay. That's exactly what happened here. Okay. Because when they're building these companies like a udio and all these companies, they know that if udio falls behind Suno, they're out of luck. So their goal is to partner up with these big companies that are behind the tech. Okay. Behind in time in tech, I should say, because they have a bigger cash pool to pull from, more capital to pull from. These entities are worth billions. Okay. So udio is not trying to seek to be the next Sony, Warner, or Universal. They're looking to get the attention of a Sony, Universal, and Warner so that they could potentially sell the company or merge with the company. And that's exactly what happened here. And, I saw the game from a mile away when I saw A16Z was behind it. So there's a lot more to go through about the particulars, but it says the subscription-based platform will allow users to customize, stream, and share music within what companies describe as a licensed and protected environment. So basically, they're trying to go after Spotify, but instead of waiting for Spotify to create their own AI like area where you can listen to AI music separate from real artist music, they decided to create their own platform. Now, my other question for a company like Sony, Universal, and Warner is why did they wait so long? Udio's been out for years. I don't know how long it's been out, but it's been out for a long time. I've been talking about it for a long time. Suno, the same thing. We're on version 5 of Suno. Okay, I don't know what version of udio we're at. But my point is, why did they wait so long? Okay, they wait so long because udio is building up what's called a user base. Okay? A user base. User bases have recurring revenue. Okay, so when this company who doesn't want to do all the marketing, the same way they sign artists who have a fan base or a user base because they have recurring revenue. That's what these record labels are in the business of doing. They're going out, finding out which businesses are cash flowing. They exchange cash or capital for the cash flow. That's what their job is to do. They're not in the business of developing anything anymore. They're in the business of finding something that works and buying it out or trying to force it to capitulate, in this case, and merge with it or make them sell or whatever their mob-like tactics are. Okay. So their job is to get the user base, the recurring revenue, okay, because it already has a built platform. And now they could just go in and take this platform, whatever platform they create, and compete with Spotify. Now, why would they want to compete with Spotify? Because Spotify is a middleman to the music industry, an unnecessary middleman that they don't want to have to pay. Okay. So they, trying to think of an analogy from like Scarface or something. If Sosa found a problem with Scarface, for example, like Scarface was getting too arrogant or Scarface was getting too rowdy or Scarface was getting too violent, Sosa's like, all right, we got to get Scarface out this equation because Scarface is messing up the whole business supply chain. So instead of Sosa, saying, hey, Scarface, we've had these issues with you, they're going to either try to, X out Scarface or they're going to replace Scarface with another middleman. So Sony can't just take out Spotify. Okay. I drew this arrow kind of weird. Sony and them can't just take out Spotify. They have hundreds of millions of users. You can't just destroy that. So their best bet in this case is not to destroy them. It's to get some kind of percentage until they get enough percentage to create their own thing. This is what leeches do. Leeches, they take a small cut and they'll wait 5 times as long but then they'll have 100%. So for example, if they took 20%, these record labels, okay, 20%. Okay, now all you need is 20%. So let's say they take 20% a year. I'm just throwing numbers so you guys can conceptualize what I'm trying to say here. So let's say the equity of these record labels is 20% a year. I only need 5 years to equal 100%. And the thing is, once you equal 100% to these corporations, then they go create their own thing because now they have enough power, I'll say, to create something that's in equivalency. Now, are they going to overnight create a Spotify? No, because it has too many users. You can't just destroy Spotify. Okay. So their best bet in that case is take equity and just suck it up and try to create a competitive force. And that's why they're using AI, because AI can outproduce all of Spotify in a day if it felt like it. If you put enough GPUs behind it, you could recreate Spotify in terms of volume. If there's 100,000 songs uploaded a day, AI can make 100,000 probably in an hour if you put enough GPUs behind it. I'm not a scientist to know the exact amount of power. My point is, though, they can outperform this because Spotify has not adapted AI yet that I understand in terms of AI music. They're accepting AI music from the users, the udios and the sunos of the world. But because Sony, pardon me, all these names get mixed up. And because Sony, Universal, and Warner, okay, they're trying to get Spotify out this equation. They're getting too powerful. So they're saying, okay, the only way we can beat them in volume is to control some of these platforms like a udio or a suno, because why? These are the on-ramps for people to even create the AI music to go on a Spotify. Okay, so if they can control these, they can basically beat Spotify at the supply chain. This is all about war. And I've been trying to tell you guys this. It has nothing to do with the artist's rights and being ethical and all this stuff that people are trying to pitch you to go against suno and udio. Because at the end of the day, who's winning? The record labels are winning, not you, by joining an email list to go against these companies. Okay. So that's why they're attacking the on-ramps. Because if you attack the supply, where the stuff is actually coming from, you can cut Spotify off at the source. And now you don't need Spotify. So they're going to slowly drain Spotify of the upload material. And that's how they're waging war against the Spotify, for example, to get rid of the middleman. Okay. That's how this stuff is going to work. And then they plan to create their own platform. Okay. Where they have the AI music generated straight onto the platform, or they do it themselves, whoever and however it happens. I doubt they're going to here's what they're going to do. And I can guarantee this almost. What these companies don't know is what people want to listen to. Okay. Because it requires a lot of research. So even if they do have an AI generator, simply being a corporation, you guys have heard many times A&Rs don't know what good music is. You've heard that a billion times. These companies don't know because they're not in the trenches of the culture. So sitting here waiting for them to do A&R stuff would take forever. So what are they going to use you for? They're going to use the user to curate for them until they create enough heuristics, they're called. Okay, or patterns, commonalities, we'll say, until they create enough patterns to then do it themselves to where they don't even need the user to curate anymore. And then they could just output AI music for themselves because they now have studied the patterns of what users like. Okay. And then once they have that data, they're just going to generate AI music themselves on their own platform where they're going to have subscriptions, just like a Spotify. But the difference is it's going to be AI generated music. So just call this AI Spotify. And that's how they're going to try to take out the influence of a Spotify, because Spotify, let me look up how many users Spotify has. All right. So according to Statista in 2024 data, it says in December 24, Spotify had almost 700 million users. There's no way the music industry is going to compete against a Spotify, no matter how hard they try, especially with their small equity stake in Spotify or in the distributors, because just owning the distributors does not own the music. They just own the revenue that comes through the distributors to even put the music on the streaming. So again, ultimately, this war is going to be against the top 3 record labels trying to stay relevant. So they're trying to create an AI Spotify. And they're trying to go against Spotify to retake these 700 million users back. And that's how they're going to get even more powerful. So when you guys thought that you were fighting, the AI fight and fighting for the good fight for artists, these bigger companies are looking at y'all like fools because all you're doing is letting them siphon the 700 million from Spotify back to their platform. And then ultimately, they're not going to pay artists anything because, again, that blurry line of like, is this an Usher type beat? Is it a Kalani type beat? Once they take the power away from the users or however they set it up. Okay. That's the game. That's how this war is going to play out. I can guarantee it. Watch this video 5 to 10 years from now. They either win or they fail at this attempt of creating an AI Spotify. Okay. And it's just going to come back to the same game theory scenario, which is they basically, the record labels took the slow route. Okay. Now the question is, will these defected cities still grow enough to overthrow that regime to the right? Okay. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of the game theory of it all. I want to thank everybody for listening. I know this is very businessy and very advanced, but hopefully you guys took something out of this. Share with a friend. It's Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. Peace out, guys.